all of this, the Lost Boys of Sudan, really arises about in the northeastern, well, more in the eastern part of Africa. And I'm going to try to represent on the board a very rough idea, okay, of some of the places. What happened to the traveling microphone? Okay, we have, can somebody point to the area where Sudan is? Okay, thank you very much. So Sudan looks like sort of an upside down piece of pie. Okay, so Sudan is about like this, okay? And right under Sudan is Uganda. Not a big country, but nevertheless very significant. And over here is Ethiopia. Thank you. And over here is Chad. And down here is Kenya. I don't know whether Kenya and Sudan are connected or not. Are they? Okay, good. Well, I mean, to that degree, actually. Okay, so these are important countries that are surrounding Sudan. Now, Sudan apparently, historically, were two different people. Down here are the black Africans that are predominantly Christian. And up here are the, well, former conquerors that came down through the Arabic world, and they are largely Muslim people up there. And so over the centuries, there have been difficulties between the north and south of Sudan. Okay, the people in northern Uganda tend to sympathize with the Christians in southern Sudan. Am I doing this right, Stacy? Okay, so far so good. Okay, what happened back in the early 80s is that in order for some of the rebel armies that rose up out of southern Sudan and in northern Uganda would actually go into the villages and in some cases recruit, and in other cases even abduct forcibly young boys to be able to use them in their rebel armies against the government. And Uganda was actually, the government of Uganda was accused of being sympathetic towards, in fact, aiding and abetting these rebel forces. And so, given that background, I think maybe it would be helpful for us to read about some of these boys who were thus taken to be serving in the rebel armies. So, maybe this is a good time to turn off the front lights if anybody's able to do that. Thank you, Julie. Julie does everything. Okay. Okay, if okay, thanks. That's just right. Okay. Could somebody read out loud? Someone who can see the screen. The first three paragraphs. Well, actually, the two first paragraphs. Anyone? Okay, Stephanie, go ahead. Do you want this?
Okay. The cattle vanished from their lives long ago. In 1983, a tenuous peace in southern Sudan reignited into civil war as the predominantly Muslim government in the north renewed its campaign against black Christian separatists in the south. Male children were drained from the landscape, snatched up as recruits for the rebel Sudanese People's Liberation Army, or targeted by northern militias. These, old enough to remember, recalled joining a moving column of people headed across the border to Ethiopia, passing through strange towns that they still imagine with the eyes of 4-year-olds.
Thank you. Let's have another person read. Okay, go ahead. Diane Dixon.
The next paragraph.
Yeah, just a minute. Can you move it up? Okay.
It would be a long time before they could stop walking. Joseph Cure Maker, a former member of parliament from Sudan's Christian South, recalled having been sent to organize the boys in Ethiopian camps. They stumbled in, he said, in groups of 10 and 100, naked and exhausted, and simply lay down on the ground. Some seemed close to losing their minds, Maker said. He mentioned one child who had stuck in his memory, who would force the other children to sing, and who would beat them if they stopped. When children are alone, they can get wild and lose their culture, he said. You could just see they were dying people. Some of them were skeletons.
And the next reader, a volunteer to read. Matt, thank you for volunteering. I think his wife volunteered.
How much do you want me to read?
2 paragraphs. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Read into the microphone.
Maker and the other adult caretakers, about 300 to look after 33,000 boys, helped to organize the boys into family-like units, but did not quite succeed in protecting them. In 1991, Ethiopia was engulfed in its own civil war, and the boys were driven back to Sudan. This time, they would walk 300 miles before crossing south into Kenya. Maker estimates that a quarter of them died. On one day, when they can't unstick from their memory, the whole column of boys crossed the Gilo River, with Ethiopian soldiers at their backs and crocodiles under the surface. Many of the children drowned that day. Simon Galuk, a 20-year-old with jutting cheekbones, spent years dreaming about a boy who grabbed onto his foot until he jerked it away. His colleague, as he put it, drowned. At the time, Galuk was 10.
We crossed the Sahara Desert. That was bad, but not like the tragedy of the Gilo River, he said, with an enormous high-pitched sigh. The issue of the Gilo River was very unique. 8 years later, the roughly 5,000 who survived and stayed together have grown to adulthood in Kakuma, in the 14-day stretches between distributions of UN wheat flour. Then, last year, when the rumored resettlement began to seem real, the boys gathered together for another great transit. America, Dung was told. It's not a country where someone can just come and kill you. There is a law. He wrote it, America, in chalk on the wall of his 3x4 meter mud hut.
Oh, okay. The question was whether Joseph Kony was involved in all of this or not. And Joseph Kony organized forces for the Lord's Resistance Army in southern Sudan and often recruited boys from northern Uganda and would actually take them into Ethiopia to be trained or sometimes into Egypt. Egypt is up there. So that was the role that Coney played. Coney has been somewhat out of power for the last about 5 or 6 years, but he did some really atrocious things, and in fact was involved a great degree to recruiting of and abusing boys. And we have some guests back there, and we're very, very glad to see you. I've been attempting to give some background to all of this, and I'd like to welcome Tiffany and her guests. And so if I might introduce Tiffany, and then you can introduce your guests. As I said to you before, Tiffany Ivans is an alumnus of BYU, and she has been doing international work and been involved in a lot of refugee-related work in Salt Lake City, right? And I know she and I share membership in a global advocacy group called Results, and I just barely found that out actually a couple months ago by looking at the email list of one of the emails. But anyway, Tiffany, we're really, really glad to see you. I'm glad to see that you're safe, and I'll let you introduce your guests.
Okay, thank you. We're sorry to be late. We came from Salt Lake, and there was snow in Bountiful, where I started at 1:45 to come down here. And then we ran into a few things which I was calling African time, and my friends here said, let's not talk about African time, let's talk about Mormon time. So I don't know, it could be either one. So I'm Tiffany Ivans, and I studied international development here at BYU. I went on to do a master's in international and comparative education, and we looked at a lot of refugee education studies. And since I've been back from England, where I did my degree, I got involved with these Sudanese guys, and had the chance to go to Sudan last year with a group called Pro-Literacy. Lynn Curtis, if some of you know him. We can talk about that kind of stuff later if you want. But we'll try to give as much time as possible to these two guests. Over here on the right, we have Abraham Guy, and here we have Jeremiah Atem. And I'll let them do most of their own introductions, but these are two of the greatest people I know. Both of them are amazing leaders. Both of them are working full-time, couple jobs, as well as going to school full-time. And coming from an area where they didn't have a lot of resources, they've come here and been overwhelmed with resources, but limited on time. So most of the Lost Boys are struggling to pay the bills, which means usually working 2 part-time jobs or 1 full-time job, and then they're struggling to go to school full-time to get all of the opportunities that would allow them to get into the jobs that they really want and get the degrees to go back to Sudan and lead the nation. Abraham Guy and Jeremiah are both very much involved in political advocacy for their movement. Abraham Guy on the right is or on your left, he's the president of the Student Association of Sudanese People. Okay, and he'll tell you more. And then Jeremiah has been involved in especially organizing for the Lost Boys nationwide, because there's many of their brothers all throughout the USA. Did you give them background on that, on the Lost Boys here?
Boys situation?
Yeah.
I sort of attempted to give very broad background.
Okay. I'll just tell you a few things just about here and now. Some of you have you guys met these people before? Raise your hands. Yeah? Okay. Are you from Sudan yourself? Where are you from? Oh, yeah? They can tell by the face. Okay. Oh, you know him. Okay. Real quickly, I'll give an overview because it's so close to home. I've been with these guys and heard them present, and the challenge is to keep it brief because every detail matters so much. So they're going to tell you their personal stories, but I'll just give you a general overview of the situation of the Lost Boys. Most of them were working in cattle camps which is very common for the young boys to go off and take care of the cows. Even from age 3 or 4, they'll go out in groups of boys. And at that time, as Jeannie was telling you, there was an invasion of the government down into the south. The south is primarily black and Christian. The north is primarily Arab and Muslim. It's a lot more complex than that, but there's also a lot of petroleum in the south in the areas that were invaded. So villages were burned and women were raped and many people were killed, and the young boys who were out taking care of the cattle would be forced to migrate at that time without going back and saying goodbye to their brothers or their mothers or their sisters or anyone like that. So in 1983 many people started migrating. These guys were about 5 years old, 7 years old, very young children. And they took care of each other, the young boys. They talk about making lines and trying to avoid the lions that would come through. They would travel at night to avoid dehydration. And by 1990, they had settled in Ethiopia in a refugee camp that bordered Sudan. And the United Nations took a particular concern for the young boys because they were so young, calling them the Lost Boys after Peter Pan, and took inventory of all the names of these people and their ages. And at that time, there were about 36,000 young boys that the United Nations had put onto a list to prioritize for placement or protection. Well, about that time, 1990, after the UN was getting involved to take concern for them, there was civil war in Ethiopia. So, conflict again in a different nation. These boys had to migrate across the Nile River, where many people lost their lives because they couldn't swim. They went from Ethiopia back into Sudan, and some of them at that point went back to their families in the rural areas of Sudan, but most of them tried to make it to Kenya in a refugee camp called Kakuma, where they were seeking refuge. The United Nations again looked for those names of the young boys, the 36,000, and only found 17,000 upon arrival to Kenya. So we don't know how many of them lost their lives. It's told to me that the majority of those who didn't make it did lose their lives. Some of them, the lucky ones, went to other places like Uganda or back to their rural areas of Sudan. The United States said that they would place 3,600 of these 17,000 that were priority placement, and Utah was committed to receive 200 of the 3,600. And I think in the end it was smaller than that. The actual number is about 3,000 maybe, and about 180 that got to Utah because September 11th put a real cramp on the number of refugees that could be relocated to America. Does anyone have any questions about that background? Okay. Why don't we let these guys introduce themselves, and if you want, I have about an 8-minute clip of some Sudanese people interviewed in the refugee camp and in their remote areas of Sudan, and then we can just open it for questions and let you guys guide the discussion. Is that okay?
My name is Abraham Gaya, as you hear from Tiffany, and Tiffany is one of our sisters Sudanese sisters. She is not American anymore. She has been in the war already, and she has been with us almost 4 years now. So I think we take her. I've been here since September 28, 2001, and that's how long I've been to Utah. I went to other states for a visit, but I've been living in Utah. I'm going to Solid Community College, and next semester will be my last semester in Solid Community College, and I'm studying social work. I was going into political science, but I think maybe I want to go into social work first before that. Because I see a lot of things that we need to do ahead of us, and that need real understanding of what we need to do and what we need, what the people need. So that's why I choose to go into social work first. I think the everything has been said by Tiffany. But we have about 140 right now, lost boy in Salt Lake, but we have about 3,000 Sudanese in general, because some of them came from Egypt, from Lebanon, from Uganda, from Ethiopia, different countries, because Sudanese are all over the world. So that's why the number is growing, and especially most of the people are coming from Egypt right now, from Kenya maybe once a month in the whole nation. But that's how Sudanese are here. So I think most of the things that we will say, we will answer most of your questions. I think you are ready to ask. I went to one of the school in Roy City. It's called Roy High School, and I just walked into the class to get an email from one of the teachers, and there was a lady from Ghana. She is a princess of Ghana. I think her father is a king or something like that, I think. And she came to talk to the class, to the school. And after we finished, one of the boys come and talk to me, and I introduced myself, and he introduced myself, and that's it. And they went back to classes. And I went to get the email from the teacher in the class, and I just walked into the class, and they say, "Oh, the class, we have a special guest, and he's going to speak to us now." And his name is Abraham Guy, and he's from Sudan. I said, "What is this? What am I going to say?" I was not afraid to talk. So I introduced myself, and they asked me a question, and it took me to talk 2 hours because of the question. I think you will be prepared. There's a lot of things to ask. And I will ask you if you are not going to ask a question later, and that will let me talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much one time, because you already heard the story from Tiffany and Brother Guy. My name is Jeremiah Tim. I'm Sudanese by nationality. To begin with my story, it's kind of like a horrible story. People sometimes don't understand it, and forgive me anyway, I don't have a good accent. It will be a problem later on for you to understand me well. In case if you don't get me, just let me know so that to repeat the question or to repeat the answer. Well, to begin with my story, in 1987, that's where the war reached in southern Sudan. Actually, the war is kind of like beginning ahead of that time. But we didn't know until the war get involved to the village where we live. So at that moment, I was kind of like 5 years old, and I really don't know much about the world, and I don't know what is going on. It might be the first time to know what is called war, actually, at that moment, actually. So when the war broke out in that village, it was kind of like in the dawn, and people were sleeping, and I was sleeping also with my father and all kind of this stuff. To wake up, it was a kind of like a bomb blast and had a horrible big sound, pumping the village and firing. So my dad is there. I was born in the family of 8 members. I have like 4 brothers and 4 sisters. So from that moment until now, maybe I can tell you it's a big surprising and kind of like a horrible situation. I never know where they are now. The only thing I knew is my father when he got shot in front of me and just fall down dead. That's the only guy I know in my family. So the rest of the family, I don't know where they are, whether they are alive or they're dead and all kinds of these things. It's unbelievable if someone hear about that one, the 5 years boy taking off from the situation whereby he lost his relative and father and all kinds of this stuff and grow up in the horrible situation in the bush whereby he don't have a hope, he don't have something to support him and all kinds of these things. So when I took up, I really don't know what to do, but as I go to the bush, I found a lot of the kids who are now more smaller than me. From that junction, it gave me a hope, so why shouldn't I make it while others do it? There's young kid there. Why should I take this situation to myself while there's others suffering? That's where the little hope came into my heart, and I make it out. In our trouble along the bush, we don't have food, we don't have clothes because we left the home because of the scare, war, and all kinds of this stuff. So a lot of children end up starving. They feel thirsty because they don't have water. The wild animal in the bush take advantage and they fray some of the guys. They don't have power to protect themselves. And to get us where we're to be secure, like going to Ethiopia, it took us a couple of weeks to go there. And it is a forest whereby we even don't know the direction where we're going, actually. The wildest people who leading us are the children, but we consider them to be adult, but they are not really adult in a developed country like here in America. To be adult, you have to be like 18 years. But we consider like a children of 9 years old to be our adult. Those are the children who lead us, 9 years to 10 years old. These are the big people who leading us at that time. So the courage took us to go to Ethiopia, whereby we go to Ethiopia. A lot of children lost their life because of lion and all kinds of these things. We don't walk at middle of the day because of the thirsty, and a lot of community outside there, they have to get advantage of us, of killing us, and even they kidnap children. So they gave her this kind of like advice so that we should travel midnight. To travel at the night, it kind of like a safe because we don't get thirsty if there's no water. But we also face another problem. Wild animals don't sleep at night. They're just snuggling in the forest. So that's another problem we faced at that time. So when we get in Ethiopia, it was kind of like another country, and they don't allow that population to go into the city because they think they're going to mess the city. They put us out of the city so that to stay there until the United Nations High Commission for Refugee to take care of us. Before that time, the United High Nation of Commission Refugee didn't arrive on time, so we don't have medicine, we don't have food, we don't have water. Majority of the kids lost their life. Some child disease involved there, like, I don't know a lot of child disease anyway, maybe you guys know them. So, like a airborne disease, we have and all kinds of this stuff, polio. We can't take care of ourselves because a child cannot take care of himself except parents can take care of them. For that situation, a lot of us end up messing around because of this disease. You can pass disease to your friend and you can know how to protect it. A lot of children end up dying about those epidemic of diseases. So when the little bit of help comes from the United Nations High Commission to help us, to give us certain clinics so that to treat us, there's no good doctors to take care of and treating us. As you know, there's population of 30,000 you heard from Tiffany. The population doesn't to be remain the same way because of those situations which I have already mentioned. It keeps reducing because of too much death of hunger, disease, and all kinds of this stuff. When we are in Ethiopia, we really don't have enemy to kill us. It was kind of like secure out of the enemy. But our little enemy we face is kind of like diseases. It's just kind of like chicken pox and all kinds of this is kind of hard to be controlled because we live kind of in a group whereby the group has 100 or something do like that. Imagine in that certain group, you will not have opportunity whereby you can just prevent diseases. There's outbreak of diseases of which more people just pass diseases to each other and they end up dying out. So in 1991, the government of Ethiopia has like a conflict. They have a new government coming in, and the new government coming in now is kind of like a Muslim. I'm sorry later on, if there's a Muslim guy among here, I'm not against Muslim here in America. I'm just want to let you know the situation which is going on. So when the government of Muslim took up, they don't like Christians, so they force us to leave the country. When we leave the country, it was kind of like it's not kind of like a piece information to inform you guys, you have to leave. It was kind of like another war break out. They came and attacked us and we have to leave. There was a river in front of the place where we lived. So when the enemy came, we have had they fired the guns and all of these jet fighters, and a lot of children, they don't know how to swim. So if you just see your colleague being shot next to you and you don't have power to do it, and there's a river in front of you, a lot of the kids just choose to jump into the water and they don't know how to swim. So what happened to them? They end up drowned. Majority of the kids end up drowned in the river, and we don't know the number actually. And when we just finally get there afterward, we found that we lost a lot of the kids in that water. The few of us, like example, me here in front of you today here, we ran along the river. We didn't accept to go to the water. That's why I'm here today in front of you, but I don't know what saved me. So when we came back to Sudan, the government heard that we came back because they still have a hatred on them. They think in future, when we grow up and our population is so high that way, we will have this interest or having that hatred in our heart to revenge for the killing they did to us, like people who lost their farm and all kinds of this stuff. So the way they want to get rid of us by killing us so that we shouldn't come back against them later on in future. They send us a troop of soldiers to come and attack us. The only way we can do, we can't go back to Ethiopia again and we can't stay in Sudan. We have to run to Kenya. That is 1992. When we go to Kenya in 1992, the government of Sudan and Kenya, they don't have a relationship. And it was another different country, so they don't have another opportunity to come and attack us. And if they do, they're going to have another trouble with another country. So the only thing they do to get hold of us, they involve as a terrorist when we go to the camp. There's another tribe called Turkana, something do like that. They go and hire those people and give them money so that they can come and shoot us in our places where we sleep in the night. We don't have very much defense to defend ourselves, and we don't have a right. As you know, refugee people, they don't have a right. Every night we kind of like in different worry because 2 to 3 people get lost their life at night. Where we should investigate this crime, when we try to complain, nobody responds for it anyway. So killing is involved from day to day. People live in scare. And we don't think about future. The only thing we think for day to day. We're doing was kind of like a daily basis life so that if you feel like to be alive today, maybe you can pray to be alive tomorrow because you don't know when it will come to be your end of the day. So the number reducing from 17,000, and I hope so, it went down. So when the United Nations intervened and found out from 30,000 to remain like 5,000, they decide that if this number now remain like 5,000, maybe they're going to end up finishing. So we have to give them opportunity for a settlement. That's why we are here today in the United States, because they want to secure our lives so they're not to die like our brothers or fellows who died in the first time. So within that 5,000, we are not all of us here. Process, it took us like 3 years to make process to come here to America. And within that process, a lot of kids also, they missed the opportunity to come to the United States. The United States government only consider about 3,800 lost boys. So, and the problem of September 11, majority of that number didn't come. We really have like a lost girl, and they are not really more, they are few. Those lost girls, they are now forced to American family, and they live with American family because girls, they can't live by themselves. So when we came here to United States, we don't have opportunity to choose where we are going because we never know what is called United States. So they just tell you, hey, Jeremiah, you go to Salt Lake. Abraham, you go to Washington. Mr. Rick, you go to Seattle. That's how we end up. I came to Salt Lake here June 12, 2001. So to begin with my future, I'm now secure. And I begin to develop to have what is called future in my life. So I enrolled in Salt Lake Community College. I'm now doing my pre-med school, so I'm going to go to School of Medicine in future. But I'm almost close. The reason why I choose to go to medical school because I have that future. I don't want a lot of my friends to die like the way I saw them in my experience when I was a child in this horrible situation where I saw they were affected by a lot of diseases. That's why I choose the career of going to the medical school so that to be a doctor and go back and help those 4 people who left behind. I make this story to be brief and short. I'm sorry if you don't understand me because English is not my first language, it's my second language anyway. I'm trying hard to learn it, how to speak it. So if you have any question later on, come on and I will be able to answer you. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe if you want, I don't know, do most people have to leave here at 10 to 5? Is that when the class finishes?
No, we're okay.
You're okay? Okay.
More people
Because we can do question answers first and then show part of the video later if you want. The video is a documentary made by a British person who is in there talking to people in the camp and also people in rural Sudan. Okay, so Abraham has an idea that if we watch the video, it might get you thinking, giving you a better perspective, and might help you trigger some questions. Okay? So we'll watch it maybe just for 8 minutes or something, and then you can write down questions and we'll listen to you. Just for background on this video, I got it from a Sudanese person who got it from another Sudanese person in a Kenyan refugee camp. So it's not the best quality of tape. But it's a man who filmed people and then went back and showed tape of families to their children and families in a refugee camp. So this is taking place in South Sudan.
Now, 10 years later, in the outskirts of Khartoum, I was showing this film in secret for the very first time to Nubas who were exiled, to Nubas who no longer practice wrestling, and to many Nubas who have not seen the mountains since the outbreak of war.
So this is a traditional wrestling practice that's about, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 years old, like they used to do in Egypt. And now the culture is being suppressed by the government. So these people in exile, the refugees, are watching their ancestors. I mean, the traditions of their ancestors.
Almost sacred to some. A tradition whose origins can still be traced to ancient Egypt and the Kush kingdoms. Now it was forbidden by the government. When I had filmed this wrestling celebration, we were unaware that it would be the very last. Within a month, these mountains would become battlefields. Watching this film with Nuba friends, one is reminded of who is now dead and who has survived. It becomes like watching a parade of the dead. Here, who is about to wrestle now, managed to escape to Khartoum with his family. I found him in Khartoum. He is well, and he explained to me the beginning of the conflict.
فعلا من بدأت مشاكل المشاكل جات من العرب وبين الجنوبيين من العرب ده بناهم حق الجنوبيين نيجي بشيل مال نعمل مثلا يجيبوا سودان كده في محل حته يقتلوهم ويشيلوا ضرب الجنوب فكروا قاعدين يا عرب يجي يعملوا زي ده احنا بالكهرباء احنا نمشي نشيل السلاح عشان يجي المشاكل لازم كمان برضه كمان من ناحيه بعض نمشي نلعب.
I'll read it for people who can't see in the back. The Arabs pushed slowly, until they also entered the Nuba Mountains and started to loot our wealth. Eventually, the Nuba were brought into the war with the Southerners and the Arabs.
In the outskirts of Khartoum, there is no shortage of space. The desert stretches forever and ever. In these wastelands, the Nuba who have escaped the war have come to live. It is here that I did the screenings of the film, and I started to meet many of my old friends that I used to know from the days of Catholic story.
And any man... All these words are being said by the River Nile. People of our village, greetings. How is it with you? I send greetings to all of you. I am not dead and still living in Sudan. Now in the Sudan there is fighting here and there. And we are in the middle of all this fighting. What is the meaning? I do not understand. Before, I used to have lots of cows. Now I have none. All my cattle have been taken away. Now, like this, I am not comfortable. It is not only because of me that I suffer, but because I am a witness of the suffering of others. Not because I am hungry, but because everybody is suffering. All of us. Everybody has a problem. I am very happy you have come back. I want to travel to the Nuba Mountains with Arthur. He's the documentarian. We'll go to the mountains, we'll eat chicken and sesame street seeds. I am very happy, and I want to see Arthur's baby boy. How can he bring his child? There is no milk. Yes, there is milk. No, they took all our cattle away. The soldiers ate all our cattle. They would come with their guns like this and take the cattle. Never mind. Let us go to the mountains together. There is little milk, but it doesn't matter. In the top of the mountains, everything grows in abundance. It's like Utah. No, no, it is forbidden. There are mines buried everywhere. When you walk on them, you blow up. Engineers came a long time ago and buried the mines. Then they left. Then new soldiers came and put more mines. All over our farms and fields there are mines. People are not comfortable. Goats blow up, cows blow up, everything is killed. It is not good. It kills people. The problem started with the persecution of the Christians. They tried to persuade us to abandon Christianity and convert to Islam. As you know, Christianity is not a new thing for me and cannot be abandoned easily. When they failed to persuade us, they accused us of sympathizing with the rebels. When the government hears this, they can do whatever they want with you. On the same day that I was arrested, the torture began. They started with a torture called Tiara Gamed. The airplane takes off. They tied my hands to my feet behind my back and hung me. I hung in the air from a tree and I was beaten hard. There were many questions. Because I did not cry, they said I was a big rebel. Eventually, one of them brought a hot iron. They ironed and burned my hands. There is one who specializes in slaughtering and cutting people. All who are brought to him are cut with a knife. With knives and pincers, they tore my flesh and pulled my toenails. They practiced many forms of torture. At the end, I was crucified. Were it not for the will of God, I should be dead. But God spared my life. should we just take question? Does anybody want to start with a question? Him. Yeah.
Well, currently in Sudan, the government is denying that they have control over the militias. What do you feel about that? Do you feel that the government is controlling the militias that are like perpetuating a genocide, or do you think that it's like people acting independently or like rebel groups? Like, do you believe the government when they say they don't have control?
Is that the militia that are going on right now? Like in Darfur, since the war started, the government have the most power and they have everything that they can do. The Arab in Sudan, let me start with the history. The Arab in Sudan are only 15% of the country. And when they came to Sudan, they were traders and they convert the Nubian, which are these people. They convert a lot of them to Muslim, and they were Catholic. And when the war started in the south, between the south and the north, they use a lot of tribal, because there's a lot of tribes, so they come and use Arab tribes and even African tribes to go and fight the people who support the rebel a lot. So that's what you see now in Darfur. There's genocide going on because they use those militia and they give them, and the government come on the air bombing, and also on the ground they use militia together with the government to kill. So that's one of the things that the government used to do so that they can defeat. Because if they don't use that tactic, then they will have no power to run. Is that your question?
Okay, to back up the question, actually, the government did not take responsibility of it because of the discrimination on Muslim and Christianity. Even though the government know what is going on, they don't want to interfere. They are the people who send the soldiers to come and kill. So why should they respond for it anymore? And they are the people who are taking cause of the problem.
You've been in this country for quite a while to understand. I don't know how much you've read about the history, but if you look at the situation in Cuba, when the Cubans left the country, were kicked out of the country, they organized together in an effort to go back and overthrow the regime or the government that was there. But then you are quite a big force doing good outside Sudan. Do you have similar plans to go get rid of this government and take over the government and rule this country in the best way? And just I don't know, second question on that, how do you coordinate with the other Sudanese all over the world, other refugees, other lost boys in Europe, Canada, or other countries of the world?
That's a good question. Our plan, the reason that we came here, first of all, was because of insecurity in the camp and the life that we went through. That's why the UNHCR brought us here. Our plan, if you are really reading the news about, Sudan news on the Sudan website, you will see like what the U.S. and the Norway and the British has been doing since last year in 2003. They have been working on the peace talk, and what they are trying to do right now, they want to separate the south from the north, and they agree that Southern Sudan will be independent state for six years, and then after 6 years, they will decide whether they will be with the north or they will be with the south, and that's what is going on. But to go back to your question, do we have the plan to go back and overthrow the government? I think if there is a chance like that we will be independent, we will be independent for that 6 years. I think you know how many people die in Sudan. There's a lot of people. Our first priority is to bring the life back. That's one of our plan right now, because people have been living in bushes. They have been eaten by mosquitoes. Some of them die, and there's no houses at all. So will be a challenge to us to prepare for that fight back. For these 6 years, if we have achieved to bring those lives back, if we have worked hard to bring people to understand why they were suffering, I think there will be a good reason to overthrow the government, because I told you before that there is only 15% of the Arabs who are dominating the country. And if we let everybody understand the reason that they suffered, I think we have the right to overthrow them. And I believe that will not be in Sudan in the few years coming.
Just real quickly.
But I'm not going to.
I'll piggyback just one quick comment that I know that as Lost Boys particularly, they do have like a federation of Lost Boys nationwide. They have many, many Sudanese in Lincoln, Nebraska. I've gone up there and there's thousands up there, I think over 6,000. And they definitely have an annual reunion where the Lost Boys get together. They are cousins with each other and brothers. They've lived next door to each other in the camp, and they still maintain ties talking together. I rode on a plane once with a Lost Boy from Indiana who was flying to Washington, D.C. to meet with a group of other Lost Boys who are in the process of doing relief efforts to the refugee camp where they're staying, also to send things back. And he'll tell you about a project he's involved in. One side note, Chris Meek back here in the corner, who is a modern-day hero at BYU, has a friend who he told me about who I should look for in Sudan. And in the middle of southern Sudan, I found out about this guy, I think Gordon Wagner, who started an organization there who's working with refugees who leave the camp and go back into the south, the areas where conflict has been, and these people become real leaders. And from my experience in South Sudan, the parents and the relatives of these people who are called Lost Boys, they really depend on them. They are looking to these people to come back and liberate their nation, to lead the development projects in their areas.
Yeah, and also to that question, we just had a conference in Phoenix, Arizona called the Lost Boy National Conference, and there were about 2,000 Lost Boys, but we were hoping that 4,000 of the Lost Boys and girls who are in the U.S. will come to that conference. But in that conference, we formed a Lost Boy National Association, which is going to work with especially with the U.S. government, and also with the non-governmental organizations who are working in Southern Sudan doing development. And we want to connect with the USAID. So we elect leaders who are going to lead, those projects into Sudan. And do you want me to tell you? Okay.
Also, to answer your question, it's already been narrated by Guy, but I'm going to give you a little clue about it, actually. Well, Sudanese people, they are really people who defend for themselves, actually. They don't depend on house people who came here. They already formed their movement, and the movement is called SPLA, People Liberation Army. That's a stand for the Sudanese liberation, anyway. Those parties started in 1983, and is still fighting Arab until now. It's almost like 21 years old fighting with the Arab. But because they don't have a lot of support, and Arab world now kind of like supporting each other, the government is supported by a lot of Arab world. Beginning the big friend, it used to be like Iraq is the big friend behind the government, and followed by Libya and Egypt and all kinds of this stuff. Even the war, it became very worse. They donated soldiers to come and fight in Sudan. And the Sudanese Liberation Army are kind of like a kind of rebel group which fight, and they don't have good equipment to fight back for the government. They're struggling until now. Maybe in future, maybe they're going to overcome their enemy and they will be having a power in the south.
I think Jeannie had a question then. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
It was 17,000 when we came in Kenya in 1992. That's when they made like a head count, and they found about 17,000. From 1992 to 1999, the number is reducing because of the enemy and all kinds of terrorists. And the leftover number is 5,000. That's where American intervened and they gave forces to them. Within that number, only 3,800 came to the United States.
I think one of the reasons also they didn't find, because there were community groups in the camp, and some of the guys, they went to live in the community. And that 5,000 were the ones who live in the minor groups. So that's what they, what they find out. And these were the first priority to be resettled in the U.S. because there were nobody taking care of them.
Okay, I think right here, and then Julie back there. Some people are having to leave and no harm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering to what extent rebels in the south can rely on help from neighboring nations like Ethiopia or other ones for their cause?
How are they relying on them?
And to what extent, if they can rely on help from those other nations, or if that would not be smart, if they would cut their funds off, or.
I guess in the very beginning, when we went to Ethiopia, that's where the government has like opportunity to help the rebel in Southern Sudan. That's where the rebel have a basis in Ethiopia. So when the new government took over in Ethiopia, the new government have relationship with the Northerners, and the Northerners are Muslim. So the rebel lost a permanent power in Ethiopia, and they have no longer power there anymore, seeing the new leadership took over the country. So they didn't have an opportunity to get help.
But we still have our allies in East Africa. We still have Eritrea, because Ethiopia was one country before, but it's divided into two now. They have Eritrea, and Eritrea is a very good supporter of the rebel in the south. And also Uganda also is a very good ally also, because they have rebel also in northern Uganda, and this rebel ran into Sudan and also back to Uganda, and they are killing Southern Sudanese, and they are killing Ugandan. And these rebels in Uganda are supported by the government of Sudan, and the rebel in the south are supported by the government of Uganda. So it's a kind of, so they still have that kind of.
I have two questions. Abraham, you talked about when you look on the Sudanese websites that you can see that there's talk of creating two nations, Northern Sudan and Southern Sudan. To what extent, do you think that will just turn the civil war happening right now in Sudan into a bilateral war? And how will that change the conflict?
I think it's going to change the conflict because I think the war is not going to stop because they have agreement before. But what I hope that the Southerners will be smart to do is, if they can prepare for that 6 years, and to build their country, bring back the life of the people, and to prepare. And I know the war will start when there is a boat. When people will board that, Southerners, of course there will be a boat, Southerners will board if they are going to be independent. This is where the Arabs are going to be really in a dilemma. If the Southerners board to be independent, then the Nubian in the central will say, I don't want to leave the Southerners. We are African. The Darfurian in the west are going to say, I don't want to leave, Southerners, we are African. And they are killing, the government is now killing them. Before they were fighting the Southerners, the Darfurian. The Nubian, there are Nubian also far north, very close to Egypt. They start the rebel, the movement very soon. It was last month, I think. And in the east, they are also African. So only Khartoum that will be north. And I think the Sudanese who are really, the Sudanese will say, get out here, you are not here, because they will be prepared, and they will be, and if the government is going to say we have to keep the Sharia law in the capital, and the capital is going to be be the capital of everybody, including Christian, I think that will bring the war. So I don't know how is that going to be. I'm not very positive that there will be war. I'm not very positive that there will be no war. So it's what we are going to see.
Maybe one question, I know people have to leave. Some people have asked me before, what can these people do, these students at BYU, even though they don't have very much money or very much time, what could they do to be more involved in promoting peace in Sudan or other countries like that?
Okay. Bring me to the project that she talked about. Let me tell you a little about, in Southern Sudan, some of the kids, 8 years old to 15, they just volunteered to join the army because their life was in danger. So they feel protected. If they have a gun, maybe they can protect themselves. So they just joined the rebel. They joined the army, and see, most of them are carrying gun. I will show you the picture here. Okay. These are the kids here, and you see this very young boy with a gun. This kid, about 3,500 this year has been demobilized by the UNICEF. And the SPLA and the UN are working together to get the gun out of this kid. So there's nothing that they just take them and they take them back to the family. And if you know how bad it is to be in the army, the way they train you, you can just kill anybody if you argue with them. So these kids are really in a very bad situation because their integration is going to bring a lot of harm to themselves and to the entire community. And so there is an organization like the USAID is working hard right now to build a school and to let these kids go to school, especially a boarding school, so that they will be by themselves. And with some people who can train them, who can take away that military thinking. And so we work together with the USAID, and in Southern Sudan is a rain forest. There's rain every time. And so these kids, they don't have clothes, they don't have anything, but the big thing is they start opening a school, and the school are meeting under the trees. Maybe I will pass this one to you. The school are meeting under the trees, and when there is rain, there is no school. In Bor, where I was born, they say there is about 27 primary school open, and these 27 primary school, there is only 10 of them are in the buildings, like a grass building, and the rest are meeting under the trees. My worry is, I know Southern Sudan very well. Even those who are meeting in the building, when they are walking to school, they don't have to carry their book because they are going to be wet. So one of the things that come to my mind that I have to do maybe to help them is to collect a backpack. And I started in Sole Community College. The students are just dropping their backpack in my academic advisory office. So we want to collect 2,000 backpacks. We're supposed to collect up to the number of the kids, but if we can achieve that number, because we have to have a goal to reach. We want to collect 2,000 backpacks and also clothes. One of the students here at the BYU called me last time, and he bring 2 boxes of backpack, of clothes. That will be real helpful to them. They never wear clothes. They wear clothes that are, they wear them for, if they have one cloth, they wear them for their life. That's it. There's no other cloth that they can change. So backpacks are the priority right now, because when they have building that they can go to school, then their books will not be wet on the way to school. So if you want to help, I think if you have an old backpack, it's very brand new in Southern Sudan. They don't care. They just want anything that can cover their books. Because USAID is printing books and it's doing that. It's doing a lot of things. The way we want to get them there USAID used to rent a container, and a container costs 5,000 for shipping from here to Nairobi, Kenya, and then it will cost other 1,000 to Southern Sudan. So we estimate that 8,000 can ship them up to Southern Sudan, and so we are planning to raise 8,000 so that we can use them for shipping. And so that's the very big challenge. If you want to help, I know a lot of clubs in Sole Community College have been involved in this, and they are collecting backpack. And some of the high school also want to involve. So if you want to involve, just call us. We have the number there.
And besides some sort of like monetary support, I think if you're interested, we can, I can give Jeannie Roby the email addresses for these people, and since both of them are leaders, oh, it's on here. Yep. You can send an email and say, hey, I'm willing to help the Sudanese who are here in Salt Lake or here in Provo. Maybe even if you wanted to assist with a little tutoring or something where they're learning the system, they still have lots of questions. If you wanted to even volunteer like an hour or 2 hours in a week, there are many things you could do to assist Sudanese people directly through service. So you don't have to have money. You know, you could volunteer in a different way. Abraham is currently working for the Asian Association of Utah, which actually does a lot of work with African refugees, despite the name. And they're very active right now in helping to educate Sudanese women, because oftentimes the women and the girl child of Sudan have not had a chance to get any schooling. So if you were interested to come up and visit their class maybe for an hour or 2 hours, even if you want to teach some sort of skill, they're looking for marketable skills where they can make handicrafts or make things that are sellable at an open market in Salt Lake. Are there any other questions? Okay.
We often talk about the lost boys. What happens to the girls during the...
Good question. Good question.
Actually,
Probably should be the last question.
okay. Actually, we do have a lost girl, but we don't have a lot of them. The enemy which fighting has, they consider girl has a less enemy to them, so they think girls do not do anything to them anyway, so they don't really respect on the girls. So the few of them came to United States is now under foster to American family. Most of them, they were not, Utah doesn't have anyone, but finally we got 2 of them. 2, that's only for Utah.
We have 4 now.
So maybe Utah is not lucky now. And the most of the girls, they didn't leave the country because they are not in risk anyway. That's the reason why. And the few came fostered to American family in different states.
You know, in our cultures, there is very different, big difference between the man and a woman. When I was 3 years old, I was sent to the cattle camp, and I didn't live with my parents until I left. And it's because I'm a boy. In our culture, they take the boy away and they take them to the cattle camp, and they train them how they can be defended by them. Defend themselves, and they teach them how to keep cattle and all those things. And the girls always stay with the mom, and they teach them how they can take care of the husband and how to take care of the houses and how to clean, how to do all those things. That's why most of the girls stay with their mom. And when the war broke out, the boys were in the cattle camp. They just ran into the bush, and they stay in the bush until we went to Ethiopia. Few of the girls who were in the villages and who were not with their mom at the time, they ran with us and they went to Ethiopia. And when we were in the camp, they were in the group, but boys and girls are not supposed to live together according to our culture. So the few communities who were in the camp, they take the girls and they live with them. And when the resettlement came, they target the minor groups because we were in the minor. So they target the minor groups, and that's why you see the majority are the lost boys, because the boys were in the group by themselves. And so we have few of them who came. We have about 89 lost girls, but Utah didn't take underage, and most of them are underage. So they went stay in Michigan, Boston, they take a lot of lost girls. This is where they live in Pennsylvania. But we still have a lot of them, a lot of girls right now from the community. Some of them came to the camp and while the boys were there already, but they still don't have their parent. So they live with other parents. But when I left in 2001, there were about 12,000 of underage. Most of them were girls. And those files were sent to New York. And they were supposed to come to America, but after September 11, all the process is stopped in Kenya because Kenya is not really good right now because of the terrorists. And so these girls that have been working hard, they've been complaining that there is still discrimination among the women. And so Norway, Australia, and Canada are working right now to resettle them because the process to the U.S. is hard right now. So that's what about.
Real quick, she has to close up, but
okay.
Last April I had a chance to go to a wedding in Boston. It was the first union of a lost boy and a lost girl, and they had people come from Vermont, from Canada, from Michigan, from all over the USA for this wedding because it was such a historical moment that a lost boy and a lost girl were marrying each other in America. So pray for women. Pray for these people.
We have a wedding. One of the lost girls who is in Salt Lake here, she have her wedding next month. One of the lost boy in Boston went to marriage her, and it's going to be November 26th here in Salt Lake. Will be, and we have a lot. Everybody is invited.
Really?
Sudanese, okay. Sudanese occasion, you don't have to be invited. You just go. And there is food always. There is Sudanese food. You know,
Ooh.
It costs a lot for the man to get married. A man have to pay for everything. You have to pay the family of the girl, 100 of cows. You have to pay for the food for everybody who attend the wedding. Everybody have to eat. So it will be really a good thing to go and see the Sudanese cultures.
Well, Abraham,
we have a lot of people coming from other states.
Oh, wow.
So
we'll pass on the details.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, stay tuned to your emails then because I'm told that we'll be sent an invitation. Okay, that's going to be a wonderful thing. Okay, well, I told you before these guests arrived that they're survivors and heroes, and you can certainly see why. Let's show them our appreciation and our support.